And here in Louisiana, the reality of COVID-19 in schools is already happening as students return to class.
Yeah, in St. Charles Parish, parents at 2 different schools were notified of positive cases there already. That's expected in all of the districts, which is why each district is supposed to have a plan to prevent future spread.
Erica Ferrando tells us what those plans look like.
Kids are starting to head back into their classrooms, and school leaders expect at least some students or employees to test positive for COVID-19. But then what? It's the first day back for St. Bernard Parish schools, so we asked Superintendent Doris Voitier.
If a student in a classroom does test positive, what happens next?
Well, if a student tests positive, then the parents will notify us. The first thing that we do at that point is to determine who the close contacts were within the classroom. It may be the teacher, it may be several other students, but the way we have them socially distanced, hopefully that will be rare.
Other school districts, including Jefferson, St. Charles, and St. Tammany parishes, have similar plans. If a student or employee tests positive, they must quarantine for 10 days and let the school know immediately. Anyone who has been in close contact will be notified and must quarantine for 14 days. Superintendents will work with health officials to identify possible clusters to determine if a school needs to close. Any students with symptoms will be isolated and sent home.
What has to happen for a class or a school to close?
Well, first of all, for a class, that has to be what they're telling us is a cluster. So one child does not constitute that. But if there are 2 or 3 within the same classroom and they're not close contacts, then we will close that particular classroom, send the teacher and those students home.
St. Charles Parish Schools is already testing their policy after positive cases. In addition to notifying close contacts, they also email all parents of those schools. Erica Ferrando, Eyewitness News.
Here in Louisiana, the reality of COVID-19 in schools is already happening as students are returning to class. Again, in St. Charles Parish, parents at 2 different schools were notified of positive cases. Again, that's expected to happen in all the school districts, which is why they are all supposed to have a plan to prevent the spread. And St. Bernard Parish, again, they are also requiring any students or employees who test positive to submit a doctor's note saying they are no longer contagious before they return to school.
Well, several schools have already started in-class learning, and we're finding out about at least 2 cases of COVID-19 in St. Charles Parish schools. Destrehan High School and Norco Elementary emailed parents about 2 COVID cases, saying that the schools have both been deep cleaned and disinfected.
And the Archdiocese confirmed there was a positive case at 7th grade at St. Anne Catholic School over in Metairie. They would not say whether it was a student or a teacher who tested positive.